Kim Jong Un, the third generation of the Kim dynasty to rule North Korea, assumed power in 2011. He inherited a nation molded by his father and grandfather, where fear was the primary instrument of control. This fear was meticulously cultivated to ensure absolute obedience and stifle dissent. From a young age, Kim Jong Un was groomed for this role, steeped in the ideology of his predecessors. His rise marked a deepening of this climate of fear. He swiftly consolidated his authority, purging potential rivals. The world watched with apprehension and curiosity. Would he steer North Korea towards reform or further entrench the nation in isolation? The answer was a resounding affirmation of the latter. Subscribe to my channel for more news. Public executions, a barbaric practice largely abandoned by the civilized world, are a gruesome reality of life under Kim Jong Un's rule. They are not isolated incidents, but rather a systemic tool of repression, strategically employed to maintain control over a populace living in perpetual fear. These executions are often carried out for offenses that would be considered trivial in most countries, a chilling testament to the regime's absolute intolerance of dissent. The very public nature of these executions is a key part of their effectiveness as a tool of terror. The regime understands the power of spectacle, the visceral impact of witnessing such brutality firsthand. The message is clear. This is what happens to those who dare to defy the state. This message is amplified by the state-controlled media, which often broadcasts these executions, further embedding the fear into the psyche of the nation. The offenses that can lead to a public execution in North Korea are often shockingly minor. Watching a South Korean movie, criticizing the government, or even attempting to flee the country can be enough to warrant a death sentence. This arbitrary and brutal application of justice creates an atmosphere of constant fear where even the slightest misstep can have fatal consequences. The psychological impact of living under such a regime is profound. It is a form of collective trauma where every citizen is acutely aware of the precariousness of their existence. The constant threat of punishment, of being denounced by a neighbor or simply falling out of favor, creates a climate of suspicion and self-censorship. In such an environment, true freedom of thought and expression is impossible. Public executions in North Korea are meticulously orchestrated spectacles designed to maximize terror and obedience. The regime employs a variety of brutal methods to send an unmistakable message: defiance is futile. The settings for these executions are equally chilling, often chosen for their symbolic value. One common method is the firing squad. Victims are often blindfolded and tied to stakes, their bodies riddled with bullets. Beyond public executions lies another instrument of terror in North Korea, the Kwanliso, a network of forced labor camps scattered across the country. These camps, hidden from the outside world, are home to an estimated 80,000 to 120,000 prisoners, including men, women, and children. The conditions are horrific. Prisoners endure back-breaking labor, often working 12 hours a day or more. They are fed meager rations, barely enough to sustain life. Many succumb to starvation, disease, or exhaustion. Medical care is virtually non-existent, and even minor injuries can become life-threatening. Torture is rampant, used for punishment and interrogation. Beatings, waterboarding, and sleep deprivation are common. Guards rule with an iron fist. The psychological toll is immeasurable, leaving many emotionally broken. Escape is almost impossible. The camps are heavily guarded, surrounded by electrified fences and minefields. Escapees are often executed on the spot, a brutal reminder of the futility of defiance. The Kwanliso are instruments of state terror, designed to crush dissent and instill fear. They are a testament to the inhumanity of a regime that views its citizens as disposable commodities. Section 5. Enslaved by association, forced labor, and collective punishment. North Korea's system of repression uses collective punishment, extending guilt to entire families. Guilt by association silences dissent, creating fear and mistrust. Families of political criminals, including children and elderly, face forced labor camps. This deters dissent and punishes the innocent. Forced labor extends beyond camps, with citizens conscripted for unpaid labor. Mass mobilization controls the population and extracts free labor. This system creates fear, suspicion, and reinforces regime control. Collective punishment and forced labor crush the human spirit and ensure obedience. Section 6. Innocence lost, the plight of child prisoners. The most heartbreaking aspect of North Korea's human rights abuses is the plight of child prisoners. These young victims are denied basic rights and subjected to horrific conditions. They endure back-breaking labor, often for 10 to 12 hours a day. Food is scarce and often rotten, leaving many malnourished and susceptible to disease. Medical care is virtually non-existent, and even minor injuries can turn fatal. Beyond physical hardships, they endure unimaginable psychological trauma. Separated from families, deprived of education, and subjected to constant indoctrination. Witnessing brutality daily, their young minds are scarred by violence and despair. The international community must shine a light on these abuses and demand accountability. Section 7. Scars on the soul, the psychological impact of Kim's reign. The true extent of Kim Jong Un's reign of terror extends far beyond the physical violence inflicted upon the North Korean people. The psychological impact of living under such a regime, under constant surveillance and the threat of arbitrary punishment, is profound and enduring, leaving invisible scars on the souls of its citizens. One of the most insidious effects of Kim's rule is the erosion of trust. The regime's system of informants and collective punishment encourages suspicion and self-censorship, making it dangerous to confide in anyone, even family members. This creates a climate of fear and isolation where individuals retreat inward, afraid to express their true thoughts or feelings. The constant propaganda and indoctrination also take a toll on the human psyche. From a young age, North Koreans are bombarded with messages glorifying the Kim dynasty and demonizing the outside world. This relentless propaganda warps their perception of reality, making it difficult to distinguish truth from fiction. The trauma of witnessing public executions and hearing stories of the labor camps also leaves lasting psychological scars. These experiences can lead to post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. However, in a society where mental health is stigmatized and access to treatment is limited, many suffer in silence. The psychological impact of Kim Jong Un's rule is a hidden epidemic, a silent crisis that continues to affect generations of North Koreans. It is a reminder that true freedom requires more than just the absence of physical barriers. It demands a space where individuals can think, speak, and live without fear. Section 8. A global outcry, international condemnation and sanctions. The atrocities committed by the North Korean regime have not gone unnoticed by the international community. Human rights organizations, foreign governments, and the United Nations have all condemned Kim Jong Un's human rights record, calling for an end to the abuses and demanding accountability for the crimes committed against the North Korean people. The UN Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in North Korea, established in 2013, conducted a year-long investigation, interviewing hundreds of witnesses and collecting extensive evidence of human rights violations. Their findings, published in a landmark report in 2014, concluded that the North Korean government was responsible for crimes against humanity, including extermination, enslavement, torture, imprisonment, rape, forced abortions, and other acts of sexual violence. The international community has responded to these findings with a range of measures, including sanctions and diplomatic pressure. The UN Security Council has imposed numerous sanctions on North Korea, targeting its economy, military, and leadership in an effort to curb its nuclear weapons program and address its human rights violations. However, despite these efforts, the situation in North Korea remains dire. The regime has shown little willingness to engage in meaningful dialogue or reform, continuing to prioritize its own survival and the preservation of its power structure over the well-being of its citizens. Section 9. Challenges and hopes. Addressing the crisis in North Korea. Addressing the human rights crisis in North Korea presents a formidable challenge to the international community. The regime's isolation, its tight grip on information, and its willingness to use its citizens as leverage make it difficult to exert meaningful pressure or effect change. However, despite these challenges, there are glimmers of hope and a number of strategies that offer potential pathways towards a brighter future for the North Korean people. One of the most promising approaches is to increase engagement with North Korea, fostering dialogue and building relationships that can help to bridge the divide and promote understanding. This includes engaging with civil society organizations, promoting cultural exchanges, and supporting humanitarian aid efforts that directly benefit the North Korean people. Another crucial strategy is to continue to shine a light on the regime's human rights abuses, ensuring that the world does not forget the plight of the North Korean people. This includes supporting the work of human rights organizations, investigating and documenting abuses, and holding perpetrators accountable. The international community must also remain united in its condemnation of North Korea's human rights violations and its pursuit of nuclear weapons. A cohesive and principled stance, combined with targeted sanctions and diplomatic pressure, can help to incentivize the regime to change its behavior and choose a different path. Section 10. The unfinished struggle, a call for continued action. The struggle for human rights in North Korea is far from over. Despite international condemnation, the Kim regime continues to rule with an iron fist. We must not betray the North Korean people by giving in to hopelessness. Every voice raised against injustice, every act of solidarity chips away at oppression. Amplify the voices of defectors who risk their lives to share their stories. Support human rights organizations documenting abuses and providing aid. Their work provides hope and holds perpetrators accountable. Never abandon the hope for a future where all North Koreans live with dignity. The legacy of Kim Jong Un's brutality. Kim Jong Un's reign has been a dark chapter marked by unrelenting repression and economic hardship. His legacy is stained by unspeakable human rights abuses, public executions, and forced labor camps. These are the lived experiences of millions, scars etched on their souls. The international community must ensure these atrocities are never forgotten. The path forward is fraught with challenges. Kim Jong Un shows no signs of loosening his grip on power. Yet we must never surrender to cynicism or despair. The human spirit's capacity for hope is greater than any dictator's ability to suppress it. The world must remain vigilant and demand justice and accountability. The struggle for freedom in North Korea is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit.